In the 60s, an artist by the name of Andy Warhol said everyone should have 15 minutes of fame. I had 15 minutes, but it stretched into over 4 weeks. I'll share a little bit now. I'm in the process of writing as much as I could remember, because in the first week while I was in the jail, I made the decision I would write nothing down, and that was easy because I didn't have a pen or paper anyway. I was scratching on the walls in the paint smile faces, and I did scratch my name backwards and flipped once, which, by the way, is also against the law there. But they didn't say it there. They said in the prison, do not face the walls. Didn't face the walls there. In August, before I left on my fall journey, most of the years, the last almost 20 years, I've gone on 2 to 3 to 4 month trips in different parts of the world. I leave and then I'll come back for a few months. Combination of programs either for fee or for free. It's what I do. I'm more altruistic than I've ever been a businessman for the last 20 years by choice. But in August, before I left for Brazil, which was the beginning of what was to be a 2-month tour, it's kind of like that Gilligan's Island thing. I've thought about this a lot. And it took them whatever length of time to finally come back. And a writer friend of mine, I'm in a couple writers groups where we read each other once in a while what we're writing, and we give it feedback and support. And he had known me for almost 20 years, so he knew about all the traveling I do. And he says, do you ever get scared when you're traveling? And I kind of flash back through some memories from the 70s. And I said, a couple times I didn't feel good, but I've learned how to deal with it. Because I live by 2 basic rules, among many others that I may not be conscious of. 1, if anything happens to me that's bad, I immediately think, will I ever laugh about this in the future? And if there's any inclination that I might laugh someday, then damn it, start laughing now. Well, as a counselor and a psychologist, I learned that too, but in different terms. The other is my first mentor in creativity was a man named Sid Shore. You've all used his products. He made millions, not billions, but millions. One of them was that little alligator clip on measuring tapes. He's the one that created that decades ago. But he was the first workshop I'd ever been to about creative thinking. I'd been a designer, I'd been an artist, I'd been an illustrator, I'd been a variety of so-called creative fields, but I didn't know you could make yourself more creative. I didn't know there were creative thinking tools, which I've devoted the last 40 years of my life to. And his was simply by asking one question, what's good about it? Until you can answer it, until you can create a long list. Deaths of my late wife, death of my late son, and many others in my life. Not that those were good things, but good things came out of them. Well, I took off, went to Brazil for a couple weeks. From Brazil, I went to Malaysia for a couple weeks, Singapore, and then through Abu Dhabi the first time down to South Africa. Was there for about 3 weeks. And we 15 of us went immediately from there to Abu Dhabi to do a 2-day program. On the 3rd day, I went for a walk. We were supposed to go to Dubai that morning for a meeting that I had arranged with a group of people interested in the work of my master teacher, Paul Torrance. And I thought it'd be a great connector. Here we are doing programs 2nd time in the Emirates, the year before in Dubai, this time in Abu Dhabi. Now we're going to make connections with real Emiratis. It's a whole different world over there. There's only 10% of them among the population. The rest are expats. And that's a subject I won't deal with now or maybe never in a book either. And I didn't show up. I didn't show up for the breakfast. They started sending out Facebook messages looking for me. At the very same time, I was already behind bars. I had been picked up earlier in the morning while photographing houses and things that I normally photograph. I was an architect for many years and a designer. I love to photograph beautiful designs. I may never look at them again, but I have a lousy visual memory. So I have the photographs. And in the digital world, I want a monument somewhere, probably in San Francisco, because they don't have enough with that bridge, the Golden Bridge, it's bright orange. And the monument would be to all those involved with digital photography and the creation of laptops, because they made it possible for me to be the insane photographer that I've become, because I've taken well over 1 million photographs since 2003. Anyway, back to the storyline. So I'm out there photographing. I see a mosque. I ask a young man out in front of the mosque, may I take photos? May I go inside? I understood he understood me, so he showed me in. I took a couple of photos. Nothing special, but I find them fascinating because they range the extremes. And hopefully 2 days later, I was going to see the Great Mosque of Abu Dhabi. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. Then I walked out, saw another street, photographed some more, saw another mosque, photographed that. It was a little fancier. That's when I met the security police the first time. Fellow said, come on, get in the truck. I get in the truck. He's taking me somewhere. I have no idea why. And he says, where are you from? Or something similar to that in Arabic-sounding English. And I said, Atlanta. Atlanta! By the way, I grew to hate that gesture over the next 4 weeks with a passion. Anyway, he took me over to this reception building that was apparently part of this secure area. Guy took my passport, took my cell phone, which was actually my South African SIM chip phone. It was useless. I was using it as a watch because I'm too cheap to buy a watch. Why, when I've got 100 functions on this thing, why should I buy a watch? Bad joke, didn't work. Move that. Strike that one, Jeff. Strike that one. Anyway. And they held me for about an hour in a waiting room. And then he came back out, gave me everything back. And he says, you're fine. Do not photograph in the secure area. And I said, do you mean on this side of the street or this area? I had already taken 300 images of the houses, at least. Because I go, I don't just take 1 or 2. And he wasn't clear about that. But then this armed guard next to him, apparently a higher rank, said it, but in Arabic, apparently not in English, do not photograph secure area. And off I went. And I wasn't going to photograph at all. I only had 3 blocks to go. But these houses were just too tempting. So I went, and a few of those. I got to about a half a block from the main road, which is where I was headed to get the hell out of that area. And then I saw a sign. The sign very clearly said, in English, beautifully colored, beautifully graphic design, photography forbidden. And I went, click! I'm going to use that in a speech someday. Less than 5 minutes later, another truck came and picked me up one more time with 2 men in it, in their multiple gray, black, white fatigues. I don't know what they camouflaged with that. The desert is yellow. I mean, it's like the joke of Robin Williams about the security on this San Francisco bridge. They're dressed in fatigues and camouflage. The bridge is bright orange. Duh. Anyway, this time they're serious. I was in there for a couple hours, and then I said, hey, I need to get my pills. I need to get my pills. I need to call the people at the hotel so they won't worry about me. And all they did was move me to another room where they interviewed me for the 3rd time. And then I sat there for hours until about 4:30, 5 o'clock that afternoon, when finally somebody else came in. They're all wearing what their business clothes, which to me they're the Sikh. It's the white outfit with the hat with the halo thing, which I know is not a halo, but reminds me of the icon from the '96 Olympics. If you remember that strange-looking space figure that the graphic designers of the world absolutely hated. And now I look back and I went, that must have been so offensive to all the Middle Easterners. Anyway, they're all wearing white with their various head things. And in comes another one. Now they get me up, they handcuff me, they put a hood over my head, they put shackles on my ankles and led me out inch by inch to the parking lot, I guess. Got me into a vehicle and then anchored me to the floor of the vehicle. And then we drove all over Hell's Half Acre to apparently the police headquarters. And the rest of that part of the story I'm still working on from my memory. That night, or the next morning at 3:30, I was dumped at the jail. I was scared. You fill in any adjective you want. As my friend had asked me in August, do you ever get scared? I don't think I've ever been more scared in my life. I had all the movies from prisons flashing through my head, Brubaker. Also, for my one client base I've had most of the last, since 1980, have been police, fire, corrections, and other related public safety people. I have heard horror story after horror story after horror story about the typical American jail. Of the being turned into a bitch, being gang raped, you name it. And there I am in a jail. I know no one. They will not let me make phone calls. They have not allowed me to do anything since 8 o'clock that morning. So I forced myself to stay awake. By noon that day, when they brought in what I jokingly referred to as lunch for the next 4 weeks, which is another chapter in my book, what they serve for food, I had already gotten to know some of the prisoners and their crimes, because the first thing they ask, what's your crime? And then they would say what theirs was. And then as we got to know each other, if they knew what it was, then we started asking other questions. But then I started using my training. And what I do in life, I hate cocktail parties. It's part of my nature. I like discussions that are about, I hate politics and all that crap. But I want to know about your life. What do you love? What are your children like? Tell me something you really are positive about. That's something I've learned over the 70 years of my life. So I started asking them, what do you guys do just for fun when you're not in prison? Got them to laugh, because I became like a hero, actually of my father more than me, but I had respect for a man named Sonny Elliott, who was the weather guy in Detroit for many years. He served in prison camps. He was Jewish. He served in 2 prison camps in World War II. And he's the one that kept the prison mates alive. He's like the character in Life is Beautiful. I kept thinking of the Life is Beautiful scenes and trying to see games in this thing. That's how I made it from day to day to day. I tried using my imagination. I laughed as much as I could. I tried to get the other prisoners to laugh when they looked down. And I guarantee you, you know when they look down. And as it turned out, in that first week alone, I made what I now call angels, very close friends, who I would proudly have in my home. Then they moved me into the prison. Still have no contact with the outside world. None. I didn't know this, but many, many people were already looking, where the hell is Alan? He's not on Facebook. This is not normal. He's usually posting 100 things every freaking day. Where is he? I mean, people from all different parts of my life saying this. The people knew I was missing, looking, where is he? Then my client from Malaysia, also, that's how we communicate, through Facebook most of the time, if not Skype. She writes to the one who's writing the most on my website, on my Facebook. He didn't come to Malaysia. He didn't take the plane flight. He's not in Putrajaya where he's supposed to have been all weekend long. Something's not right. So they narrowed it down that I had to be in the Emirates still. But then one of the most major angels, man we call Kasai, even after 6 months, he really didn't know what his crime was. He now knows, and hopefully soon he'll be out, or at least know how long he will serve for a trumped-up charge. He was talking to his wife on one of the cell phones. Rephrase that, cell block phones, not one of those things in your pockets. A little different. Hanging on the wall, there were 3 on one wall, on one wing, and 3 on another. That's what we got to use from 9 in the morning until 6, if you had a card. I didn't have a card yet. I was walking by him, and he had helped me do many other things already. Gave me a set of extra clothes. He gave me food to eat that was edible instead of the stuff they served 3 times a day. And then he turns to me as I'm walking by him and says, hey, you want to talk to your daughter? I'll get my wife to call her from her cell phone. That was my first contact with the outside world. That was on Tuesday. On Wednesday, the embassy came to visit me. I had no idea they were coming. All I knew was I had visitors. And I had to walk down all these long hallways by all these different guard stations who didn't know why the hell I was walking down that hallway. They had to keep calling and double checking to make sure I was not some runaway or some weird person. They knew I was Anglo, for obvious reasons. At that time, of course, I still had the long hair and no, the hair was gone after an hour of entering the prison. Zing, zing. They sheared that off. The beard I had cut off a couple days later because I hated looking like a zealot. And I liked the look. Most people seem to agree. Anyway, so I walked down these halls. And, no, not that hall, that hall. Okay, you do what they say. You do not argue with the guards. They can't touch you. They can yell at you all they want, but they cannot touch you by their own laws. Not in that prison, unless you touch them. But some of them are really bossy. So I walk down this hall, I go down, I'm sitting on a terrazzo floor. I'm so used to sitting on polished concrete floors and terrazzo floors now, I don't need carpeting in my house. For 4 weeks, that's where I sat half the time, either in a positive mood or a negative mood. And then they opened the door and I walked in, and in came a woman named, her name is spelled Melanie, but it's pronounced Milani, and then Asid, who was her assistant. She was one of the counselors from the embassy. Just having them there was enough. Did they do much for me? No. They opened doors for communication. Because when I signed the Privacy Act, I specifically said names, and I did not sign it for the news media or the general public. I did not want to create an insane situation, which I found out just recently was a wise decision. Because the judge, and this is where I'll end with the judge's decision, the judge was not aware of all the media around the world. He got on UP and AP. It was on major networks like CNN, even Fox. And when I got home, I made fun of that. I said, oh my God, I'm on Fox, of all things. Yuck! Anyway, I'm doomed. The equivalent of Fox in London is the Daily News. They were the only one that printed something nasty and horrible at one time, but my daughter pleaded with them and they took it off. And they went with the storyline that my team of 9 or 10 or whoever they all are, there are at least 9 or 10, they call themselves the Fab Group, Friends of Alan Black for Freedom. They spent hundreds and hundreds of hours, daily conference calls every day, learning what the hell to do, and helping my daughter go from an extreme state of panic to where she is now. But on Monday the 17th, at 6 o'clock in the morning, myself and about 3 others from our block, and then 30 or 40 from other blocks at the prison, were escorted out and started in the process of moving to the courtrooms. I had been told I was going to the Superior Court. That meant either I'm out or I'm in for a long time. The others were going to different levels of courts. There were 2 of us that went to the Superior Court, shackled, handcuffed. He was from France, myself from the United States. We got to the courtroom. I'll cut out that because you can read it later. By the way, I have the forms for those who want early printing copies. I'll work on that one, Jeff. That needs work. That definitely needs work. Anyway, it took hours. hours and hours before the judges finally showed up in this gigantic courtroom. Huge. It's like something like the Hall of Congress kind of thing, or something out of a Star Wars movie. I was later in the list. Most of the prisoners who were not Emiratis were given about a minute. I had about 10. The lawyer the day before had said, when the judge asks you, you tell your story as detailed as you want. If he stops you or just lets you finish and then asks, are you guilty? Tell your story again. Tell your story again. I didn't sleep Sunday night. I consider myself a fairly ethical, though I'm flexible on that, honest person. I had great difficulty with that. To me, that was lying. I knew what I did wrong. I had been warned. And yet I still took a photo. I didn't think it was significant. They obviously do. It cost me 4 weeks of my life and a lot of frustration and pain. But I made a lot of friends I will never forget. But my attorney, who I'd only met the morning before, who they had negotiated with 8 or 9 different attorneys who wanted as much as $150,000 to his $11,000. He's a PhD as well as a lawyer. He was in the white outfit. When it was his turn, there was a little platform for the attorneys to stand at, and then the huge bench way up in the sky. He stood there for a moment and then walked around and basically yelled at the 3 judges, as close as he physically could get to them. I learned later what he basically has said. I'm trying to get an English translation through a friend of mine who the lawyer claimed he would send it. Hasn't so far. But basically he said, this case is an embarrassment. Embarrassment to our country, embarrassment to this court, embarrassment to our legal system, and embarrassment to our security system. This man should have been let go weeks ago and maybe given a fine, but not 4 weeks in prison. I had no idea what he just said because the translator couldn't translate. The guy talked so fast, and I don't think he could translate English other than good morning. Nice seeming guy. He turns to me and says, I like your lawyer. Good, then tell me what the blank he's saying. No, I didn't say. I didn't have the guts at the time. Then they went away. The judges went away. About an hour later, 2 guards came up, told me to stand up. They each grabbed a hand. They weren't going to hand shackle me again. And they led me out of the room. No idea where I'm going. And it turned out to be the judges' outer chambers, where the 3 judges were at a table. My attorney again, the translator, a couple other police-type officers. And then once again, but this time, he's this close to the judge's face, yelling and screaming whatever he was saying. And going, oh, shit. It's done. I'm going to know Kasai like my brothers. We're going to be roommates for years. Kind of said that in my head. I don't think I was thinking that funny at the time. But then the judge smiled, and he wrote something on my file. And he took another one, and I was escorted out. About an hour later, he publicly said in the courtroom, not guilty, no intent. Minimum fine, which was 500 dharmas or whatever their money is, which is roughly $135. And then he waived it because of my time behind bars. It took 30 hours to become a true free person again. But I guarantee you, when I walked out of that prison at 7:30 that next night, I realized what freedom is. And you know it very well. Thank you.